All right, let's do it. Let me see. All right, we're gonna do this. It's been a journey, man. I think it's been maybe 10 years, a decade, literally 10 years since I like dove into like my first book, like personal development wise. I think it was it's like a yellow book, The Power of Habit. I was in Brazil walking to practice. I shouldn't have been walking. And that's another story, but. Yeah, the contract that I had said that we were supposed to have transportation and all this stuff, and I guess the team just whatever, the funding, all that stuff. But I started that journey, man. It was about 10 years ago. I remember reading The Power of Habit. I read a book, maybe it was The Greatest, about Muhammad Ali, and I was walking to practice, right? So I'm in Campo Mourão, Brazil at the time. And it's hot, 45-minute walks to practice and back. And I remember just walking and I'm walking. I'm like, I feel like I could be listening to something. So I would listen to music. And I was like, I'm kind of tired of listening to music. So I remember that was when I really started to listen to some audiobooks. And, at the time I was, I'm a this is my first time being a professional athlete, living outside of the country, living outside of my state. This is the first time living out. Well, I grew up in Maryland and then lived in Pennsylvania for school. I went to college, right? I guess I don't know if I consider that living there, right? So I was in school, but yeah, I'm living in Brazil. And, at this time, on a team. It's like their first time in like the top conference. And so, we're competing. It's hot. I'm sweating every game, drenched out, all this stuff. And in my downtime, I'm just kind of just wasting time, I guess you could say. I'm watching every episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm doing Friends. I was watching Friends. I was playing 2K, anything that you could think of. And I think these walks really started for me of like, okay, let me start listening to something else. I started listening to these books, and then I remember like going online and trying to learn about stocks, and there was like a TD Ameritrade app that would allow you to like invest fake money, where you could like kind of try investing, and then, and that really started for me, right? I just wanted to fill my gaps. I look back now and I remember this idea of like being a student athlete, and once you graduate college, if you decide to be a professional athlete, you become a professional athlete. And you don't have to do the student thing anymore. And I didn't. And so I filled that gap with like having fun. I would go out. This was the time where I was going out, meeting a lot of people. I learned Portuguese when I was, in Brazil, because I didn't want to just be the guy that just went to this country and didn't actually like assimilate and learn. I had grandparents that, kind of like introduced us to this idea of traveling and seeing the world and all this stuff. I had a grandmother. She would always say like last one in the pool is a rotten egg. Every time we would go on vacation, she'd be like, if you don't jump in the pool, you're a rotten egg, all this stuff. And so I sparked this idea of like wanting to travel, wanting to see the world. So when I went to go play in Brazil, I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy that's not learning Portuguese and I'm just going to use English. So, and plus I was a point guard, right? So like you have to, everyone's looking at you for direction on the court. And just really, really interesting time. I was able to learn Portuguese in like 6 months, just because like you have to. I remember going to the airport, and what happened? Oh, I'm expecting it's going to be an English, like English speaking airport, and I get there and it's like I can't understand anything that they're saying. And I remember telling my mom this. The only thing I saw, was Portuguese pizza, and I'm like, all right, I'll get one of those, right? Turns out Portuguese pizza is like, meat, ham, pork. I don't eat pork. So I'm like, oh, this is horrible, So it was just a really, really big culture shock for me. But yeah, that's really where the journey started for me. And, it was a up and down, I guess you could say, like journey, especially playing ball overseas and, learning the culture and, just being away from home, and then, getting to the point where you're not getting paid on time. And it was just like a really, really interesting season for my life. But that really, I would say, sparked this journey of personal development, wanting to grow, wanting to understand more. Actually, even if I think back further, I would say even some conversations in my dorm rooms with some of my teammates. I had a couple of teammates. One of them, his name is Yorgos, and the other one is Ben. And Yorgos is from Greece, and Ben is from Canada. And it was like us three became like best friends. I don't know what it was, but like I just connected with these guys. And it's funny because you had some guys from the on the team that were from different cities, and a Canadian who's just so curious to learn America, or a guy from Greece who's just genuinely like just different. It's they can get left out a lot of different things. And so I remember just like really connecting with those guys, and we would have conversations late at night, 2:00 in the morning, about Plato and Aristotle and morality debates. And I wasn't really strong in any type of like belief system, so to speak, at that time. It was just like I just wanted to learn. So we were having these debates back and forth. I remember having a philosophy class that I took, and all this stuff. And that, even as I'm talking about it now, I saw something recently that took me back to like a history class I took in high school. That's Spalding. High school, Mr. Ruddy Spalding. And he introduced this concept of like the observer effect, where like particles like change based on how you view them and like if you see them. I can't remember, we watched some video where it's like when cameras would look at something, like the particles in a room would shift. It's crazy. You just don't know what you're hearing as you're growing up and what that'll turn into, so it's been a journey. If you check my page, I've stopped on this YouTube channel so many times. I mean, I remember coming back my second year from playing ball, and I'm working out. I want to go back to play again. I'm not finding a team, and I'm like, man, I gotta, I just got to do something. I remember I had gone through a breakup and all this stuff, so I started recording videos. I started really diving into that. I had always been pretty creative and doing like 2D, 3D animation, all that stuff, and that's what drove me into this world of like video editing. And I started a YouTube channel, and I was talking about my story playing basketball overseas, and I was being real, just like sharing like, hey, this is not what I thought it would be. It's not exactly what I thought it would be. So I was really trying to look out for people who want to play overseas and give them like the real idea of what it, what the journey consists of, and the mentality that's required to succeed in different arenas like that. And so I started that, and at the time I was working out still, and then I was trying to figure out what was next, and then I was working while I was working out. And I was doing some video stuff on the side, and then I meet a guy who was, in a network marketing company, and I start getting into the world of business and marketing and all that stuff. And then my channel, I started trying to talk a little bit about that stuff. And then, I was introduced to the world of financial services. I started talking about insurance and like all that stuff, And it's just been an interesting. When I look back on it, it's just been an interesting journey. That being said, I do believe that this entire time, the stuff that I'm looking at, talking about, and sharing on this channel moving forward, that was always brewing in there the entire time, right? And so I'm excited to just use this as a way to share some things that I've been learning. When you look at the world that we live in today, there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of I guess you could say suffering that we see in the world, a lot of challenges. We're in an interesting time in humanity, let's just say that. And one of the things that I have learned throughout this journey, I can't tell you how many books that I've read, how many conferences that I've been to that talk about growth, personal development, belief in self, and going to church and reading the Bible, and then learning about the Quran, and then studying a bit of the Torah, right? And then meeting people that were Buddhists and learning about chakras and all this stuff, and then understanding like neuroscience and what's this thing called, the nervous system, and how that works, and theta waves and brain waves, and there's so much out there. But one thing that I'm learning is that the experience that a lot of us are having in life is a direct reflection of the story that we're telling ourselves. And that story has been told to us by other people. And this is why I truly do believe that understanding the biggest story, which is history. My dad always says history is written by the victor. And, it's a true statement. And just understanding the story of humanity, understanding people, understanding why people do what they do, understanding how have civilizations grown, understanding, I see so many challenges. I was just having a conversation with this guy, and he's like, I think everyone's like a little bit racist, and this is not a bad guy. And I understood why he was saying that. And I also know that belief system comes from the stories that we've understood or we've been taught and told around humanity and just how things work, right? And so I've seen a lot, man. Whether it be how people deal with each other, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different career backgrounds. How football players deal with basketball players in college. We had like fights with the football and basketball team in college at times, which is crazy. Seeing how Latinos treat African Americans, or how Latinos treat let's say Caucasian or white Americans. All right, I'm married to a Afro Latina. And I remember in college having a relationship with a young Caucasian lady from West Virginia. It's just like, and then going to a private school. I went to a private school. I went to a private high school in Archbishop Spalding, and then I went to St. Francis University in Pennsylvania, right? Which you could consider like an all-white private Catholic schools, both of them, right? And so I remember sitting in a mass and being like, "What is this?" I remember my graduation. My brother had a private public school graduation, and it was so much fun and exciting. And then I remember having our private school graduation, and it resonates in my mind today. Let us proclaim the mystery of faith. I remember that. So like I'm learning Portuguese while I was playing down in Brazil, and seeing how Americans treat cultural interactions, and how do Brazilians treat Americans. Being on sports teams where it was, it's almost always integration. And like I said, the dudes that I met in college, and, having a dad who was in the military. My dad's from Memphis, Tennessee, and he was in the Coast Guard in the 70s as a black man, So there's been so many experiences, and I've been able to acquire a unique, I believe, perspective on how things work, how we interact with each other, why things are happening the way they're happening. And I think it does boil down to the story, like I said, we're telling ourselves about ourselves, and the story that we're telling ourselves about humanity and how the world has developed and how things work. And I think it's led, the wrong story will lead to a lot of detriment, a lot of turmoil, a lot of internal suffering, a lot of broken relationships, a lot of struggle that doesn't have to happen, but it does because of our lack of awareness. And I say this whole idea of like self-awareness. I think self-awareness is just really understanding your story, understanding why things happen the way they happen, and not taking, not using that as a mechanism to, redefine your identity in a negative perspective, or just succumb to that story that you told yourself. Oh, this happened, so that's why I'm the way that I am. Okay. And then also understanding how to move forward past that and transcend that story. So anyways, that's the goal. It's funny, the whole time this channel has been Evolution TV, and I've talked about everything under the face of the planet. Do I believe that there will be conversations about creationism and evolution? Yes. Am I afraid of those conversations? No. I have a unique perspective on life, just from what I've seen and what I've learned, and I think that it's a worthy conversation. I think that understanding the differences between Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Buddhism and all that stuff, I think it's important. I think it's important to understand how things have grown the way they've grown. I think it's important to understand why certain nations exist the way they do. I think it's important to understand the Native American population of the Americas before the Great Migration and before the transatlantic slave trade. I think that's important. I think so many things, understanding even like the history of sports and competition and, how we treat each other. I'm in a space, I'm in a very competitive industry where you got people that they treat each other certain ways because they work with different companies, or like, all of that stuff I think is huge when it comes to our experience in life and why we act the way that we act, why we treat people the way we treat people, why we accept certain things, why the motivation behind why we do what we do. And so I'm excited to share, those things here, a lot of stuff that I've learned, and maybe, who knows, maybe bring on people, to the conversation as things unfold. Just to give you an idea, the word evolve. Okay, if you look at the etymology of the word, I'm not talking just traditional evolution, Darwin's theory, all that stuff. No, when I say the word evolve, right, this is Evolution TV. When I say that word, if you bring up the etymology of the word evolve, and I've talked about this on my Instagram and all that stuff.
The word evolve, just so you guys know, to develop gradually, especially from a simple to a more complex form, by natural process to a higher state. So when I see that word unroll, when I see that word unfold,
it says to unroll, to unfold, or to open out. Okay, a Latin word evolved. Okay, and it says to make. It says to make clear or to disclose, to produce. Right, to roll, there you go, right, growth and maturity, development, right. So the way I see it, when you look at this word evolution, one, I don't believe that it is a contrast, but I don't believe it's opposite or negates the idea of the creation story and the origin story and how the earth came to be and the involvement of God and all this stuff. I don't think that it X's it out. I think it actually works in collaboration. And you can look, we'll just, this journey that we're going on with this channel will be robust and have a lot of things that we'll talk about. But I really do believe it is just revealing the true purpose behind why something is created, right? So if you look at humanity's evolution, I see it as humanity just revealing the truth, right? Revealing the truth about humanity. Why were we really put on this earth, right? Myself, Greg, why am I here? What am I truly here for? I believe that an individual's evolution is really them just revealing the truth about why they're here, right? And peeling back on the onion, right? Because we all have a deeper truth that a lot of us are not expressing on a day-to-day basis because of whatever we've been conditioned into, whatever we've been taught about ourselves, the stories we've been told about ourselves, the stories we've been told about our grandparents, the stories we've been told about our great-grandparents, the stories we've been told about the country that we live in and in our ancestors and who came before us, right? And the stories we've been told about the world and how things work really dictate if we're going to express the fullness of who we really are, or if we're going to hide a bit of it, right? If we're going to try to bury some things, right, and suppress some pieces about ourselves. But I truly believe that when we are just genuinely ourselves, authenticity is the highest frequency on the face of the planet. What do they say? Trees don't, the world doesn't get mad at trees for standing still in certain seasons, right? And so anyways, there's going to be a lot to talk about, and I just want to really use this as like a intro video just to kind of prepare anyone watching. If you ever come to this page and you look back on the first, well, there's a lot of videos prior to this, but this is really like the next season or like if you want to call it 2.0 or just just the next journey that we're going on, and I'm excited for this one. So if you guys have any questions, comments, if I say, look, as we go on this journey, if I say things wrong, I'm open to being corrected and learning. I've learned a lot, but I am fully, Tom Brady said something, we don't know more than we do know, right? All of us, you guys watching this as well, there are more things in this world that I am unaware of than what I am aware of. And so this is not me on this, page looking to try to be an expert or trying to, no, this is me sharing the things I've learned over my lifetime. And I just believe if all of us had the courage to do so, there's a lot of lives that would be changed. I tell people all the time, your story is like a key that unlocks a certain number of doors. We just don't know how many doors it unlocks. My story might unlock 10 doors, and those 10 doors needed to be unlocked. And when I say 10 doors, it means somebody was able to converge onto that story that I'm sharing, the things that I'm learning, and it was able to help a breakthrough in their life. Maybe it's 100 doors, maybe it's 1,000,000 doors, maybe it's 1,000,000,000 doors, who knows, right? But we all have people that our story is meant to reach. I truly believe that, because your story in its most unique and genuine, authentic form, I believe, brings healing to other people as well. So I'm excited. Let's get this thing on the road. And I really don't even have like a full, just so you know, like a full game plan of where this is going to go. I just know that it has to go. Okay, I had a conversation with my wife recently where I was like, there's some things that I'm talking about today that I don't want to talk about. If it's based on what the world says I should be doing, I'm supposed to be on the phone making sales calls right now, But deep down, I feel that this is the journey and the path that I'm called to. And so we're going to allow it to unravel the way that it's supposed to. And, we'll see. So welcome if you're here for the first time. I'm looking forward to going along this journey with you. If you have any questions, comments, anything about what I'm saying, drop it in the comments. I do have an Instagram as well, but I'm going to be sharing a lot more of my stuff here and allowing it to reveal itself the way it's supposed to. I think that some of this, some of this quick cuts and all that stuff on social media can be deceptive. And so I figured let's just do long form here on YouTube. That way people get a chance to see some of the nuance, see some of the mistakes, see the, how imperfect this perfect journey is going to be. And I'm grateful to be here and to share it with each and every one of you. So let me know any topics you feel like would be good to talk about, because I've seen a lot, and if not me, I know a lot of people that have seen a lot. So maybe there's topics you're trying to learn about that you want to understand a bit more, or just get other people's perspectives on. Drop it in the comments, and I'd love to have some conversations about that stuff. I'm not afraid to talk about anything. So yeah. I think I'm getting over that because there's things I don't want to talk about. There's things I don't want to talk about because I just don't want to have to talk about it. But I know that it's important, so I'm willing. So anyways, all right. Look forward to see you guys on the next one. When? I don't know. Where? I don't know. But coming soon. Take care, y'all. Peace.